What happens when you purify your body, your mind, your spirit? Something miraculous. The body begins to heal itself. Welcome to the Medicine Girl podcast, where each week we explore new ways to heal your body from the root, igniting your inner healer. You are a medicine. And now, here's your host, Robin Stebbins.
Thank you for that introduction and welcome to the podcast, Corrie Bignell. I have been after you to do a podcast for a while. After seeing that we're both nurses, you are now an unregistered nurse, which I love that title because that's pretty much what I do, but I do home health, so I can be unregistered in that field. But if you could just introduce yourself, let our audience know a little bit about you, and then we'll just kind of go from there.
Okay, I am Corrie, and I'm the unregistered nurse. As far as I know, I'm the only one in the world. Well, with that I've named myself anyways. I was a nurse for 15 years in Kitchener, Ontario, Canada, and due to the mandates, I left. I got fired, put on unpaid leave, and got fired. And at that time, Canada, I knew was headed in a pretty bad direction. So as soon as they put me on unpaid leave from my hospital, I put my house up for sale. It was my forever home, and left the country. Me and my son came to Nicaragua, and I had never traveled before, so I didn't even know what I was getting into. I'd never saw the ocean before, and the only way I can explain it is when you surrender and when you take a leap of faith, the universe actually provides for you. Because I couldn't have done this on my own. Actually, I never traveled, so I didn't even know what I was doing, and I certainly didn't know any Spanish at the time. And so the universe has just gifted me a life of abundance and love. And I live in northern Nicaragua, in a pretty remote area, where most of the locals do not speak any English here. So I've had to kind of learn Spanish, even though it's not great. And I've just kind of made a life for myself here. I was called to sign up for Jason Christoph's coaching course last May. And I can listen to my intuition now. And I just felt like you have to do that. And so once I started his course, my life is just kind of went off in leaps and bounds in such a positive direction. And now I really feel like I'm called to help people. And that is, I think my mission in life is just to spread the word that Jason is spreading and to give others hope, especially nurses. Now that I've been away from the acute care hospital for so long, I realize just how toxic nursing is. And we as nurses, and I will include myself in that, we are not very healthy people. And how can you take care of other people when you can't take care of yourself? So that's my mission, and so far it's going great. And I am just thrilled to be here and to speak my truth and not be kind of doom and gloom, like how some conspiracies are. They're like all doom and gloom. No, I look at the world now as, totally different than I did in 2021.
Well, yeah, I think first and foremost, the doom and gloom, like what I came to the conclusion of is that this has been going on for eons. I read the Bible. It's the same thing has been going on in biblical times. It's just that now we have an awareness of it. So then where do we choose to put our focus? We can put it on an endless sea of rabbit holes and conspiracies that each have its own new and improved hamster wheel in to distract us, which is part of the game. Like we're so much better if we're distracted by a hamster wheel or a conspiracy theory or a rabbit hole, whatever you want to call them, than actually taking action for our own lives and lighting up our own lives. Because I think that's really, as a nurse, that's what I see that my whole role is to walk in healthy, vibrant, happy. And then that's your impact. That's your medicine. You don't have to sit there and preach at people and tell them, this drug is bad. And they'll ask the questions. Mm-hmm. And that's what I want to ask you about first. You're right. I wouldn't go into a financial planner that was bankrupt or had been, in financial ruin. But you look at the nurses, the nursing profession, and for the most part, most are out of shape, morbidly obese.
Morbidly obese. I would say in my hospital specifically, 70, maybe even 80% are overweight, morbidly obese, like bariatrically obese.
Yeah.
And even if like I kept myself, I thought I kept myself in good shape, but even I would work out every day. I was so full of inflammation. I had migraines because of the lights at work. I worked night shifts. I mean, that took probably years off my life. Being in that negative, just being in the building, never mind the food that they consume. And I'm just generalizing, not every nurse is like that, but like I was the weirdo for bringing healthy food or not eating at nighttime. I would never participate in the potlucks that they would have at night on nights, at like 1 a.m, a big potluck for whoever birthday it was. It's like, no, if I'm going to eat, a cheap meal, I'm going to be at home having a glass of wine and relax with people that I love, Yeah. I don't drink anymore, but I used to. And that was the other thing I did. I wouldn't say I was an alcoholic, but certainly on my nights off, I would have 1 or 2 glasses of wine. And you could tell, I look back at pictures now, it's like, oh my God, like I was full of inflammation and I had a lot of fat. I was strong, but I had a lot of fat. And so I even realized, like, I went to fire school and I was just about to become a firefighter, and then the mandates came out, but I had injured my knee in fire school. And so it was very, very painful. I couldn't even bend down at work. I couldn't do a squat properly. So I had physio. Then they said they were going to give me injections. And then they placed me on unpaid leave and my knee was healed. Like that.
Wow.
My migraines, I haven't had one since. And that was just the physical environment. That's not anything that I was eating. And I was really stressed when they placed me on unpaid leave. I had to sell my home, which was my grandmother's home. I bought it off her when she passed away. I was going through a significant amount of stress, but it was removing myself from, I call it the slaughterhouse now, that hospital, because not only do they kill patients, they also are killing their staff.
Yeah.
It's a slow kill for some, and everyone, it's the golden handcuffs, right? Everyone, me included, we're working for this pension that you get when you retire if you're 60 or 65. And by that time, your physical body is so destroyed that you can't even enjoy your pension. And so when people said, well, you're just going to let them fire you. And I said, yeah, I'm taking my pension at 43 and I'm actually going to live my life. I don't even care if it's a small amount. They froze it anyway, so we couldn't get it for 6 months or something, which is so crazy. But I said, no, why? It doesn't make any sense. Why would you just slave away until 60 and then good chances are that they're sick and some of them even die right after they retire.
Yeah. No, exactly. And that's the culture. And the culture of nursing is, like what you said, bring in the potlucks. And so that's the culture. And if you're not part of it, then for me anyway, your life isn't as easy at work because they know that you're not one of them. You're a threat. And they see you looking at them you're bringing in your healthy foods. They're over there eating, who knows what with the potlucks. They're just,
Bad.
nightmares, like nightmares. And not only that, like the food at the hospital is a nightmare. I have people
Horrible.
coming home on Ensure.
Yes.
And I can actually tell now when I walk into a house and I meet with a person for the first time to do an intake, I'll ask them, do you drink Ensure? And I only ask them that because I know that they do. You can tell. Their legs are swollen. They've got like a little puffy jowline that's indicative of Ensure, of drinking, soybean oil and high fructose corn syrup.
The only time I think patients actually are, their dietary intake is really good is when they're NPO, when they're not allowed to have anything by mouth.
Yeah. But then they usually get like something in the IVs that.
Right. Well, but I mean, really, they look better then than they do once you start putting them on food, like it's so crazy. The food is absolute garbage. And when when I step back and look at it now, like what in the it is not a place of healing whatsoever. It is actually horrible. Aside from emergency medicine, I will never ever go to a hospital again.
And even then, I mean, we started during the 2020, started an underground medical system, which even for emergency med, half of the firefighters in California were fired, EMTs, nurses. So the ones that were fired were available. And even then you really don't need the toxic medical system running all these tests. Half the tests are causing the problems that they're, quote, testing for. So I want to go back to, though, the obesity and why so many nurses specifically we think are obese. And then I was researching calories. And the way they determine a calorie or a kcalorie is they take the food and usually take the water out, dehydrate it, and burn it. And the amount of time it takes to burn, excuse me, is what they determine the calorie content of that food. The last time I checked, we don't have a furnace in our bodies. That's not how the human body operates. So the whole calorie idea is false. What I see is that when we're eating frankenfoods, seed oils, toxic foods that are not meant to go in the body has to either surround it with mucus or a lipid layer. And so as we're consuming these toxins, our body is creating, this excess fat to store all these toxins because it can't keep up with it. It doesn't want it to go through the system. It's got to keep it out of the system, and you can't have diarrhea and vomiting, with every bite. So it's got to somehow keep up. But I also look at it more spiritually, and I want to get your opinion on this because when I started working in healthcare, this was 35 years ago, it was in locked psychiatric hospitals. And all we had were these toxic psychotropic drugs, Thorazine and Clozaril and horrible drugs. So people would gain, 40, 50, 75 pounds on these drugs. They'd have this mask of, no expression. All they could do is smoke cigarettes and drink coffee and be in their chemical restraints. So I got into nursing thinking this is the helping profession. And I was, rudely awakened to it's the same thing, you're just doing it on a larger scale. Like all these drugs are poison. Everything I'm involved in, because I worked post-surgery, those are toxic poison. I saw with my own two eyes nurses overdosing people and not reporting it. Children that came out of tonsillectomies. And I wonder if spiritually what we're doing is insulating ourselves when we know what we're doing in our profession is not helping people. In fact, hurting people. do we have to insulate ourselves?
And that could very well be because, and I don't think consciously they know what they're doing, because I didn't. And that could be it, right? And there's so many factors as to why nurses are obese, but it's probably a good reason right there. And I never thought about it that way. Spiritually now, I could never go back and work in that environment because I know way too much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because they are, if they're unhealthy, usually they're on a lot of pharmaceuticals as well themselves. So they're disconnected spiritually from, their higher self. So it's a vicious cycle. And I'll just talk about too, like, I don't know in your nursing school, but I mean, that was a school of indoctrination as well. You know what I mean? Like you don't question orders. You have to listen to what the doctor says. And, they put them up on this pedestal of, you must listen. You can't, they teach critical thinking, but only their way of critical thinking, not to question a doctor. And I got myself into, I question doctors all the time later on in my career. Not at first. At first, you're like, okay, the doctor says that, he must know. And then I started to realize, like, oh my God, these doctors actually don't even know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And mental health, like talking about mental health, those poor patients, they're giving them these drugs that could kill a horse. And then you're right, they provide them coffee, carbohydrates, and cigarettes, and expect them to get healthy. Like, right. The whole thing is so terrible. Like I don't know how people can't see it, but they're unhealthy, so they're blocked. They can't even see what they're doing.
Well, I think just to put an emphasis on that too, Corrie, is when you see it subconsciously, like, and that's what I really want to dig into. Do they know somewhere consciously? Because when you see consistently day in, day out, your patients are getting worse. In the hospital, it's a little different because you see them for shorter periods of time. But the doctors have to know. I mean, I can't let them off the hook. Like, they have to see what they're doing isn't working. Yeah. That's the definition of insanity. And it's just go harder. Give them more drugs. That's all they do. I had an interview with a physician from the Netherlands that got out of medical school and just started working in an ER as her first job, and would write these prescriptions and would get nauseous every time she wrote it, to the point where she would have to go in and throw up in the bathroom before she could give anyone a prescription. And finally came out.
And that could have been my knee problem too. I mean, I did physically hurt it, but the migraines, I was doing things, and I was a float nurse, so I worked all over the hospital. I worked emerged, ICU, med surge, kids psych, mental health. And, I only kind of really, when I was sitting here under my tree, I kind of had a flashback of like, oh my God, how many people did I chemically inject that I restrained almost every day in emerge, almost every day.
Yeah.
And 4-point restraint or 5-point restraints, 7-point restraints. Like, oh my God, like I had to ask for forgiveness, because I'm like, I just was doing what we were told to do, and what I thought was right, and keeping them safe. And so I think it does manifest into physical ailments. And if you look at my pictures as in 2020 as a nurse, I was I took over their Instagram, my hospital's Instagram, for the day, and I had my scrub cap on and my COVID-19 shirt with the virus and the girl going, we can do it, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was so full of inflammation. it was my body saying, like, you are not doing something right here. And I didn't dig into it that much until I was here. And oh my God, what have I done? I've hurt people.
Yeah.
The statin drugs, we gave them out like candy to every patient.
Yeah. Every patient, and you're not told to question the medication regime, like should they be getting drugs and supplements, but it's just make sure that these aren't interacting with the other drugs to keep, so that you're saving their life, or so they tell you in nursing school. And that's what I mean. I was always the one questioning. I said, why do you need the Tdap booster every 10 years if it's lifetime immunity? And then why do you give it to, why do you give a tetanus shot after somebody stepped on a rusty nail? Aren't you just injecting more poison into the poison? Right. Like, none of the vaccines made sense to me. But that nursing school is, at least the one I went to, was indoctrination camp. It was hardcore. They were so mean to us. They kept, every day they would tell us, well, you were going to kill your patient because you're so stupid and you're going to be, you're going to give them too much of this drug, but it wasn't ever what's in their medicine cabinet that could be contributing. What's their weight? What's in their kitchen cabinets? What cleaning supplies do they use? What's their family life like? What's their spiritual life?
And when I now that I'm a self-sabotage coach, that questionnaire that I give out to clients, like, if we were to give out a questionnaire like that to every patient in the hospital, we'd have a pretty good idea as to what their issues are, right? But they don't even talk about nothing. They ask your family history, and if your family's had surgeries or cancer, and
because they're looking for more spells to cast. Oh, you have a history of breast cancer or stroke. Boom, boom, boom. And then the doctor will verbally say, oh, you're a higher predisposition. And then they will go and parrot it to their friends. The doctor told me. I mean, that's what I deal with on the daily, is the doctor told me, the doctor told me. But when we start awakening to everything that's going on, especially the medical industrial complex, then you have to take yourself and what part you played in it, and take that into account, and then ask for forgiveness and do your part in that scenario, which is, I think, where a lot of people get stuck, Corrie. It's like, I don't want to look at that.
Yeah, it was hard to remember, and I don't remember everything, of course, but the stuff that we would do at work, and I just did it because that's what you did, right? Everyone else was doing it, and the doctor said you have to do this, so you do. And then it wasn't until 2020 when I said, this doesn't feel right to me at all. Because they would say, oh, COVID's coming, COVID's here, the hospitals are going to be, full, and we were not full. They were lying. And and then that got me questioning everything. Like, what actually was going on? When I saw a physician write a death certificate for a patient who had stage 4 lung cancer, and he said the cause of death was COVID-19. No, that doesn't actually make any sense, because he was going to pass away. He had stage 4 lung cancer. He was 70 pounds. He died with COVID-19. He didn't die because of COVID-19. When you got to swab the whole entire unit, and to be honest, and I don't even care who knows this now, I thought, well, this is such a joke that I would swab their armpit and they would come back positive for COVID-19.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't make it. I could see, because I needed proof.
Right.
Like, okay, what is actually going on here? And I know they said I had COVID in March 2021, they said. And so I tried to give it to my son. I used his toothbrush, and I licked his peanut butter and put it on his toast. Okay, if I have it, I'm going to see if he can get it, because it's so transmissible, right?
Yeah.
And he never even got sick. And so when I was going around swabbing these side tables and I didn't put it up their nose. I thought, well, and then a whole bunch of people had COVID-19 from the swab that I swabbed their side table. Come on.
I did, I would go and do home health, and I never wore a mask. And the first thing I saw was this Indian family in a 2-bedroom home with 9 people. Grandmother supposedly had COVID, but they're not of our culture. So everyone was passing baby around. Grandma was holding baby, passing it to the whole family. It was in, colder. So everyone was inside. No one had it. No one was sick. And so that was like March or April. And I was just like, okay, I'm going to do a deep dive and find out really what's going on. And so I would have a patient who was obsessed with it, swabbing himself. Like, I have COVID this morning, and then by the afternoon he didn't. That indoctrinated. I said, well, why don't you swab your stuffed animals? See what happens. He had a stuffed animals behind his sofa for his grandkids. And he swabbed each one of them with a different swab. And some of them were positive and some of them were negative. And instead of like, oh, wow, this is crazy, he said, oh my gosh, that's how infectious this disease is.
Right.
Like that. And that's when I knew, okay, these guys are under a spell that we cannot break.
No.
And I'll just be in the fray if I try to interrupt their delusion. The messenger will definitely get shot. So I took it more as my role and just to stay in nursing until I'm called otherwise, because the people that I go and see, I educate and empower and have them go back to, what does your intuition say? Or I'll say, are you happy with this medication regime? Most of my patients are on a minimum of 15 to 20 different drugs.
Yeah.
Minimum. So it's more, talking about what's in your kitchen cabinet, what's in your environment. What do you ever get out of the house? Get some sunshine, get some water. But then that's the next thing I kind of want to talk to you about. Now that you're in Nicaragua, it's not just you fix the one root, okay, so now you're not working in this toxic environment, but all of it changes. So then you get there and it's like your body can just release this. I call it's like an insulator. You have to be insulated from this barrage. In Northern California, I'm under a constant barrage of people that are thinking that way. And I went to Italy. I lost 5 pounds the first day, I think 8 pounds during the trip, not doing anything different. Just the inflammation leaves the body because you don't have to be so protected.
Yeah. Well, even when I go home to Canada, I go home in the summer and I don't feel great there. I will get a little bit more swollen. Like here, I'm in the sun all day from the time it rises to the time it sets. I'm at the ocean at least, once a day. Usually, I'm very rarely indoors. I'm outside, and the way of life here is so different. And the food, although they do put chemicals like on some of their vegetables and fruit, I still don't feel. I feel it's better here than in Canada. Maybe it's different chemicals, or the ocean air just is able to cleanse it a bit more. I'm not sure. I try and get organic, but it's sometimes hard to. But I do have a lot of like I have bananas and plantain, lemons and limes on my property, and so I eat that. And then I was saying to you last night on the call that the beef here, like they don't have money to give drugs to the beef at all, and so when my gardener, he butchered a cow for me. It was $400 for the whole cow, no drugs, no hormone, literally grass-fed. They don't call the cows here grass-fed beef because there's nothing else they eat but grass, you know?
Right.
So it's, and they walk from pen to pasture twice a day. From the pen, they'll go to the pasture and hang out there all day and eat, and then come home. And so some people say, oh, they don't look healthy. Well, that's how cows are supposed to look.
Yep, exactly.
Not full of inflammation like the cows, and I'll just say Canada. Like, they're huge, but they're like I was when I was up in Canada. They're full of inflammation, and that's what you're eating. And I know that, you know, when our cow got butchered here, it had a good life, and now I have it in my freezer for, you know, a year.
Yeah,
and it's cheap, you know.
Well, and it's in alignment with where you're living. I think that makes a huge difference also. And it's just like this beautiful cycle that the steer had a good life. But what we're eating here is tormented animals. I grew up next to a feedlot too. I mean, they pump them full of such toxic hormones and growth hormones and steroids and antibiotics. And then, you know, the food has to keep getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper to get the same results because of, you know, the whole industry. But so back to kind of in that culture, I just want people to know when they're going into, say, a doctor's office or the medical industrial complex versus what you're doing now. What are some of the key differences that you see in, okay, Joe is going in because he has a set of symptoms to see the medical industrial complex, or his twin brother is going to see you? What's the difference?
Well, I think I look at them more in depth. You know, where is your Wi-Fi? What's your 4-day log? When was the last time a doctor asked you for 4 days of your food, like a food journal? Probably never.
Never. And they wouldn't know what to do with it if they did ask for it.
How many seed oils are you consuming? How much coffee are you consuming? We do in traditional, or in our Western medicine, they do ask how much alcohol, but they also say it's okay to have a certain amount of alcohol. Well, no, actually it's not. You know, how much caffeine, how much exercise are you getting? You know, like all of those things. It's so in depth, and the way that Jason has made our questionnaire is like, it's foolproof. You can just see exactly where a client is kind of going in the wrong direction. But never, ever has a doctor asked any of those things. And it would make a huge difference. Seed oils alone. How much seed oils do you consume?
Yeah.
Well, they don't ask that. And that would be, you know, kind of an easier fix. Well, they give seed oils in the hospital.
Yeah, they do.
They don't ask how much takeout you're getting, or how many cups of it's Tim Hortons in Canada, but say Starbucks. No, how many Starbucks are you drinking a day? Right. Do you know that there's obesogens in those coffee cups? Yeah. They don't say any of that, and that's nurses. I mean, I stopped to go cups from Tim Hortons, or I would drink tea from there in, I think, 2018, because I subconsciously, I said, something is in these coffee cups that are making me addicted to, I had to be there to go there on my night shift by 9 o'clock. I said, what is going on with these coffee cups? There must be nicotine or something in them. I didn't know at the time it was obesogens. And then I quit that, but I still would drink Starbucks. Like, I was a Starbucks junkie. But now I know, but doctors never say that, or even look at all the pharmaceutical stuff. Like, now doctors can't even say that the childhood vaccines are causing damage. No. I had thyroid cancer. The doctors just said, oh, well, women your age in southwestern Ontario are getting thyroid cancer. Well, why?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's just because that's what happened. Yeah. Just
Like
really quick too, back to the coffee cups. What I came to the understanding of recently is that there's drugs in them and chemicals that cause obesity. There's estrogen enhancing drugs, estrogen producing drugs. My actual friend that I talked to in person, went to Starbucks every day with his girlfriend, and they got their annual labs done after that, like about a month and a half after their Starbucks routine. Not because of that, just because of their annual labs. And they were both off the charts in estrogen. And that was the only thing they could think of that was different. They stopped, went back, got retested, no estrogen. So, but the point I want to make with like what's in those coffee cups is that's the drugs that we can test for. This cabal, this medical industrial complex, they have drugs that you wouldn't have ever heard of.
Yeah.
That can stimulate you to think, oh, I want a little treat. What sounds good? And then this little liquid in a paper coffee mug, because it's so programmed too on all of the screens. All of the movie stars have their little Starbucks or their to-go cups. That, and that's what we're looking at. And okay, well, you can test for benzodiazepines and opioids and whatever else, but what's actually in there is something that we don't have tests for. So just keep that in mind. And then, like, the buzzword is the obesogens, but that just means it's a chemical concoction your body doesn't understand that's going to have to surround it with either mucus or lipid. Lipid means it's fat. You're going to store it as fat.
And there was a lot of, I had posted that a couple months ago, there was a lot of pushback on caffeine doesn't cause cellulite. And like, okay, well, actually, it's your body's way of telling you you're filling it with toxins. And people can't hear that. They can't even handle that.
No.
And I kind of was targeting nurses at the time because it's part of the nursing culture to have your coffee and then you won't eat because it's impossible to get a nice break at work and you have half an hour. So you got to scarf down your food, but you're not hungry because you just consumed like 2 big things of coffee.
Right.
And or you're on night shift and so you consume more coffee. Like, it is a vicious cycle and it's very, very unhealthy. So I feel like I have a new course coming up and there is a few nurses from my work still working there that signed up. So there is hope.
Yeah. Well, there is hope because they see you.
Yeah.
And they see what you look like and your happiness. And it's not like you're preaching at people. It's just, no, this is what makes me happy.
And I don't think when you're stuck in that environment, you can't see. It's like a fish doesn't know he's in water.
Right.
He's just in, that's where he lives. Right. And so these nurses don't actually know how bad it is. And so hopefully I can offer them a bit of a beacon of light for them to say, okay, you know what? It's not worth it. It's not worth your health. If you don't have health, you have nothing else. Who cares about your pension? You're 45 years old. That's 20 years from now. You're already 330 pounds. You're not going to make it to 65.
Right.
I don't even know how some of these women walk down the halls.
I know. That's what really shocks me is that, when you're a floor nurse, it's a lot of active work. It is not easy. And especially when you're working at night. I don't know how you did. I used to work knock shift way back when, in my 20s for a brief period of time. And it was killing me. Like I couldn't do it. Normally I will just force myself to push through, like muscle your way through. This is your job. But even that was too much for me. And I think too, it's that insulator, because when you're not in alignment with your soul's purpose and deep down inside you are harming people for a paycheck, to keep your life going normal. It's like your body keeps having to insulate your spirit. And so when you see these people at, like at 300 pounds, like you are really insulating a lot of pain.
A lot of pain. They don't even know it. They have no idea. And that is a really good point, Robin. I never thought of it like that before, but I knew when I left that my migraines and my knee pain was gone. I was like, I was doing something bad. That place it's a slaughterhouse.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the emphasis, to put onto this is that what you have seen and what I have seen, directly with our own two eyes, witnessed for years and years and years, is that they don't have your best interest at heart whatsoever. And you are a number. They know from cradle to grave what you're worth to them, to the medical industrial complex. And you and I aren't worth anything to them. No. And that's why we're a threat. Because I haven't spent a dime on any pharmaceuticals, any over-the-counter, nothing. And you can see the data points, and I'm not sick.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing too. Doctors don't make money in Canada and the United States, I'm sure too, if there's not sick people.
Yeah. And like you said, it's a slaughterhouse, but it's not like you go in and one shot to the head. It's a soft kill. So that as you soft kill someone with drugs and the supplements and vitamins, they're all toxic poisons, you're going to get this illness. And two, what I saw, I don't know what your opinion on this is the diagnosis isn't something that's set in stone. You come in with a set of symptoms. So if you have muscle weakness or you have balance issues, they'll start to say like, oh, this could be atypical Parkinson's, but it's just, this is the symptoms that you're having because you're being soft killed or poisoned from something, but it's not a genetic or any type of disease that just happened upon you. It's from the poisons.
Well, as soon as they say the disease out loud to a patient, they automatically, like, it's a spell, and they're like, oh, I have the one of my favorite one, it was fibromyalgia.
Yeah.
Okay. So that means what?
Or chronic fatigue syndrome.
Right. It's like that's the term that they can't find a friggin' diagnosis for you, so they're just going to make one up that sounds good. And then that patient, they're mind controlled into thinking, oh, I have fibromyalgia. And then they're in victim mode, and then they're in sick mode, and they'll never get out of it.
Yeah. And by design. So here's your, oh my gosh, they're so relieved sometimes. And that's my tagline. I say, stop making love to your diagnosis.
Yeah.
Because I see that it's like you become it, and it's like your baby. Look how pretty my baby is. And if I say like, that's not even a baby, doesn't exist. Yeah. It's like, then you see the claws come out, but that's the spell casting. And that's what I keep wanting to let people know, especially that are listening to my podcast, which is some of my patients. And there are nurses that I work with that listen to it. And some doctors now are wondering.
Great.
Because and I think too, what I really want to ask you about for the getting into the closing is, we know deep down inside what we're doing isn't necessarily helping people. But where do you go from here to say, okay, when, let's say a doctor's waking up, a nurse is waking up, and they've been in the field for 25 years, 35 years, to just say, okay, here's what I did, forgive themselves, and then get on to actually living their soul's purpose.
Yeah.
How do we do that?
It's I just know what worked for me, and I had to leave the country.
Yeah.
That was my journey, and not everyone can do that. It's a journey. Once you wake up and you're like, oh shoot. Asking for forgiveness is probably one of the first things you can do. And then I don't know, if you stay in that, try and find a better floor to work on, or I would say a new job, but I mean, that's hard for me to talk like that because I don't know their situation. That it's hard because once you're a nurse, like I mean, I was like that. I was like, I can't do anything else. I'm a nurse. Like I can't, I was like, I can't do anything else. Maybe I could work at Starbucks maybe. Yeah. What else am I going to do? Like and that was the thing when I lost my career. It was like, that was my identity. I was Corrie, the Grand River Hospital nurse. And what do I do?
Right.
It took me coming down here and time. That's the other thing too. When you're a nurse, you don't have time to reflect on what you're doing at work. You kind of just stuff it in the back, and you don't have time because when you go home, you're taking care of family usually or whatever, and you've only got a few days off, and then you got to go back in there, and then you're distracted. Like you have no time to think about anything. So it took me a good year and a half down here, basically in solitude, to be like, what have I done? And not everyone has that opportunity, and I feel bad about that. But that's what I had to do. Because as soon as I left, I didn't think, oh, forgive me for what I've done. That took probably a year for me to figure out. Like, holy smokes, what did I just do? And that was with, call to the medics. I think for any nurses kind of asking questions to me, instead of me just kind of verbal diarrhea saying, okay, this is what's happening. They don't really believe me. But the Call to the Medics, I feel, is such a great documentary to kind of expose the medical system.
Yeah.
And then from there they can say, okay, well, what do I do now? Well, I don't know what you do. Everyone is put on this earth for a different mission. I found mine. It took a long time for me to figure it out. I don't know. There's more awake people now, so it's easier for people who are waking up now. Like, good grief! When I was waking up, I was a lunatic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it depends on where you are. Like, I'm still seen as a complete lunatic, but also what I find is that when people are waking up, whether it's nurses or doctors or patients, it's just more, just ask questions and then just keep centering that light back to yourself. Don't put anyone on a pedestal, and don't get swept up into looking for another savior or another hero or guru or teacher.
And my whole thing was, no one's coming to save you. I have to save myself. And once I surrendered to that, I don't look to anyone to save me. I'm doing it on my own.
Yeah.
And that's scary for a lot of people, because they don't have the strength to do that.
Yeah. By design. By the design, when you're drinking alcohol, when you're drinking any type of caffeine, I don't care if it's green tea that you grew in your garden, any type of caffeine, any type of nicotine, any type of frankenfood, you won't be able to have that energy. It's like, you got to get rid of those. When we talk about the root causes you want to awaken, you can't constantly be tethered down onto the ground with all these toxins and poisons and expect to really see yourself or see your potential or walk in it. And sounds like what you do. Yeah.
Well, I drank caffeine up until May of last year. I started Jason's course, and I was like, well, that's enough of that. And I'm pretty strong-willed. I can just say, no, I'm not having that anymore. And then I would have like a beer, maybe one beer a day, and then I was like, well, why? I can't coach people, and I was still in his school at the time. I can't coach people to not drink, and I have one beer,
right?
A day. That doesn't make any sense. So December 31st of 2023, I had my last beer, and now I will not drink caffeine. I will not drink alcohol, and I feel so good. I feel like I'm just leveling up so much, and it's just escalating quickly. Holy shit. And it doesn't, people can't understand that it's a toxin. And I know, I can say from experience, like I I do take one pharmaceutical, and that's my Synthroid, because they took out my thyroids. And so I haven't quite figured out how I'm going to go around that, but that's the only medication that I take. And I just feel fantastic. And it's because I'm eliminated a lot of toxins, most, I would say.
That's what I find most in my work with clients and patients, is that they want to know how to safely consume their brand of poison.
Right.
Like they each and every one has, well, you know, how much chocolate cake can I consume safely? How many glasses of wine per week can I consume safely? And it's, you know, I had one girl that she's doing this elimination because she's been constantly constipated, and she's doing really, really well, but she's at home for spring break around her family. It's a younger gal, 20 something, and they're all eating that Matrix junk food, and she feels left out. She was sobbing because she feels so left out. And it's like, I've realized how deep that programming goes for us to go ahead, but to find our tribe of poison.
I was just going to say that you have to find a different tribe, and you have to, you know, unfollow those people that are posting pictures of them out drinking.
Yeah.
That's not even cool anymore, actually, in my opinion. You know, unfollow the people that have, I just saw a girl from my hometown and her lips are like way out of here. And I'm like, is this even, I can't even believe this is real. Like, I can't, and I'm not saying I'm better than anyone, but I'm trying to level up, and those people are on a lower level.
Yeah.
You know, and so I don't choose to hang out with them anymore. And that's the thing, I think, when you do start to level up, you do get more confidence to be like, I can be on this ladder by myself and I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Right? I don't care.
But Todd, speak really quickly about how different you feel after like stopping the one beer. Nobody's going to raise an eyebrow that, oh, Corrie's drinking a beer a day, or the caffeine or anything like that. Like, is it really that big of a difference?
It is such a big deal to me that I wasn't alcoholic. I wasn't an alcoholic last year. I was when I was a hockey mom. I drank all the wine. But for the last 3 years, no, I would have a beer, you know, maybe every day, every other day. And it is a significant difference in my connection to my higher self. Cute. I can't even, I am abundant of everything right now. Like I'm more creative, way more creative. I'm crushing my new business, you know, like that's like, I'm a nurse who didn't even know how to do a PowerPoint presentation. Like I didn't even have a computer until I moved down here. I didn't know how to use a laptop. I'm not even joking, you know? So because of that, I'm unstoppable now.
I see that. I see that that's what is stopping us, is that we get tricked into taking whatever brand of poison, and it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's wine or whiskey or cocaine or supplements or frankenfoods, like it's stopping you from accessing this. It's like this whole spiritual library.
Totally.
All of these things that it's like, oh, now I'm going to level up here and level up here. And oh my gosh, I can't believe how much energy I have and how well my brain is functioning, my memory and my intuition. It's like never even tempted to touch that stuff again.
And last night I did a breath work with my soul sister, Laura, and like just breathing for like 35 minutes. And I felt like I'm totally left my body. And I think this is the best feeling that I've ever had. Way better than drinking alcohol, way better than smoking weed, or I never really did that anyways. But like that feeling I had, and I did that with her guidance, of course, but that's just breathing. And I was like totally elevated, and this is just breathing, no drugs involved, you know?
everything we need to access is from within. I know that now, and if that's the only thing that you get out of this podcast is like everything you need from within, all of the knowledge, all of the wisdom you have for yourself, you have it from within. All of the medicine you have is from within. I think the truest medicine is that you've made the decision to get better. That's what I've seen time after time after time. At age 55, through my 35-year career, when people decide to heal, they do. Even if they're still in the medical industrial complex.
Yeah.
It's not like they hope, oh, I hope this treatment's going to work, or I hope this shark cartilage is going to take away my cancer. It's like, no, I'm done with this.
Our mind is so powerful, and that's what I've learned through all of this, is our mind is the most powerful thing. And that's why our social engineers are trying to block our, our minds, our prefrontal cortex, or, trying to damage that. So we have brain damage and our minds aren't working.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's what you're here to do. I'm taking Jason's course. It's about uncovering each and every one of us, our own brand of self-sabotage, because you have been programmed from birth. We all have. No one escapes from it. To sabotage yourself, to fight within yourself. The war is within yourself. And then you're not a threat. Then you're not doing anything. Then you're stuck in a hamster wheel, or you're posting pictures of your party with beer on the Friday night. Right. That's it. And then you go back to, put your head down and drone on and work till you're weakened, in a weakened state on the weekend. And there you have it. There's your typical average human on planet Earth at this point. So, Corrie, where can people find you if they want to work with you? What does that look like?
I'm on Instagram at Corrie Bignell, and Facebook as well at Corrie Bignell. And my website is theunregisterednurse.ca.
It's a high.
I have a new 4-week Become Unstoppable program coming up April 1st, and they can register on my website under courses. And so it's going to be, I have like 35 people already, which I'm so pumped up about.
That's amazing.
It's going to be really good. I think it's, and like I said, there's people from my hospital. And I think I'm on the terrorist list at that place. So.
I think we all are. If you're at this level and you're on my podcast, like, yeah, you're on a budget list.
Who cares?
What are they going to do?
I know.
I'm just speaking my truth. And I think the more you speak your truth, the more you're in alignment with your soul's purpose. Totally. You're somehow protected. Like, I feel very protected.
I feel so protected. Like, I've got no worries. And, if it's my time to go, then it's my time to go. But for right now, I'm not done. So
that's right. And you're living in alignment with you. Mm-hmm. And so, the ones that you're choosing that safety, supposedly, like, I see you when you're in your 70s getting your diapers changed and you don't remember who you are or what your whole life was. And that is no way to go. Trust me on that one. Yeah, it breaks my heart to see people in that place. I go in dementia wards frequently, and it's just, they're not living. You're a vegetable walking around.
Yeah.
So instead of becoming that, this is your wake-up call. Call Corrie, get yourself lit up, become unstoppable.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Robin.